Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our March webinar for the Assessment Accountability Team. We are so glad you could join us today. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders. If you're new to our webinars, type your questions in the questions box, and we will monitor those on a regular basis. If you have technical issues or need assistance, please send a chat in, and we'll also monitor that. And we do have the presentation posted today as a document, so you can download that and follow along with us as you go. Of course, this webinar is being recorded, so if you have any follow-up information you need to go back and revisit, it should be posted by the end of the week or by Monday. I want to welcome some new team members to the Assessment and Accountability Team. Andrew Bennett is officially starting on Monday, March 18th. He will oversee our Idaho Reading Indicator and our ISAT English Language Arts and Literacy assessment. Andrew's joining us today in the office for the webinar. We won't ask him to provide any updates as he gets on board, but you'll be hearing from him the next time. But if you want to say hi, Andrew, we'd love to have everyone put a voice with a name at least. How's that?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Andrew Bennett. I will be overseeing the Idaho Reading Indicator and ISAT English Language Arts and Literacy assessment piece for the next foreseeable future, and I am very excited to be here and help everyone with all the questions they have and support you guys in any way you can, so please reach out.
Thanks, Andrew, and welcome to the team and to Idaho. We are excited you are here. We'll start updating our website with Andrew's contact information and email address here in the next few days, but again, his first official start date is Monday. We also have another team member, Kevin Chandler, who will be joining us Monday, April 1st. He will be overseeing our math and science assessments. Some of you may have met Kevin Chandler as he has facilitated our Bias and Sensitivity Committee in Idaho for the last 5 years and has previously been part of work in Idaho around the science assessment development system. So we are excited to welcome Kevin, and he'll be joining us on our next webinar in April. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin and Aika for some updates on accountability.
Good morning. We wanted to let everyone know about a new compare feature in the report card, which is available at idahoschools.org. This will allow you to compare 3 schools at one time. So we have a screenshot in the slide there where you can see how to access this feature. There is an arrow at the bottom that says add to compare. So you would do that for the schools you're interested in comparing. And then towards the top, you'll see an arrow that points to text that says compare. When you press that, all the schools that you've selected to compare will come together in a quick comparison report where you can look side by side at some of the indicators. We also wanted to thank everyone for working with us on the student engagement survey. Due to some inclement weather in many parts of the state, we're going to extend that student engagement survey window by 2 weeks. So you now have until March 29th to complete the student engagement survey. But remember, our target participation rate for the student survey is still 90%. If you'd like to monitor the number of survey responses and look at some preliminary results, you can use AdvancedEd's eProve system, and we've posted directions for using eProve on the new surveys page that's on our website. This year, we're also going to have parent and staff engagement surveys. These are a part of the state accountability system as well. The window for these surveys is going to be April 15th through May 17th, and we're going to email out custom links for these surveys. But these links are going to go to superintendents and charter administrators to distribute, unlike the student engagement surveys that went directly to building principals. So in the next few weeks, we're going to share some additional information about those surveys. We're going to post that on our website, and we're also going to have an outreach toolkit that districts and schools can use to encourage participation. Now I'll turn it over to Aika.
Hi, everyone. This is Aika. IC submission deadline is this Friday, the 15th. Next week is the time to verify your cohort members and their transfer status in the cohort grad preview application. And there is a link there that you can click on to go to the application. Within the application, you can view up to 4 graduation years, their members in graduation or transfer statuses You can also start submitting the supporting documentation now. If a child is still part of your cohort who you thought has transferred to a different Idaho public school, please contact the receiving school. The receiving school may have assigned a different EDU ID, or the child never attended the receiving school. For the former, please follow up with your LEA's IC coordinator. For the latter, you may want to follow up with the child's parent or guardian. Also, if you see any inaccurate data displayed in the application, please follow up with your LEA's IT coordinator. This is about test security. Our March 7 newsletter contains test security tips, resources, and FAQs. If you have not seen it yet, please click the link displayed here. If you didn't know we publish a biweekly newsletter, please subscribe by clicking the link above to stay in touch.
Okay, if we don't have any accountability questions, we will move on. Kelly Glenn, we see your question about ISAT, and we'll address that when we get to that section. Okay, ISAT ELA math is now. We'll have Danielle advance our slides. And just a reminder, today is the last day for the interim assessment window. It closes this afternoon at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, if any of you are on the East Coast watching our webinar today. The assessment viewing and application, teacher hand scoring system, online reporting system, and airways will remain open through the end of the year. Just a reminder, our summative assessment window opens on Monday, the 18th. That includes our science in grades 5 and 7, ISAT, English Language Arts, and math. Again, to kind of reiterate what Kevin said earlier, we have extended this window by 1 week to May 24th to accommodate schools who've had excessive closures due to illness or weather. So we appreciate the flexibility that our vendors been able to provide in meeting this extended deadline or extended window. We hope this serves our schools well. Just a reminder, the test administration manual is available on the portal. There is an icon or card for the test administration manual in the portal link, and it's also chapter 10 in the All Systems manual. Ayaka mentioned a few moments ago about test security, and I wanted to highlight chapter 11. It covers all of the test improprieties, and this is probably the most important section of the All Systems manual during the test administration, besides the test administration manual itself. So we encourage you to review both chapter 10 and 11 prior to the opening of the window and refer to them throughout the test administration window. Again, closing May 24th. Just a couple of suggestions to reduce ISAT test incidents. These are the most common we see in the first 2 weeks of the test window. The first is to ensure that students have the appropriate accommodations before testing begins. Again, accommodations must be set up and tied before students take their test. So please ensure that you've coordinated with your students with disabilities, special education staff, your English learner staff, and your other appropriate staff to ensure that any designated support or accommodation is already administered and set and tied for a student before they begin their test. We also want to remind folks to ensure staff know that the interim assessment window is closed. I think frequently the first 2 weeks of the window, we are often submitting or seeing test incidents submitted that involve oops, I thought we were administering an interim assessment. We didn't know it was the summative assessment. So it is imperative that all staff are very much aware that the interim assessment window closes today. And on Monday, if they administer an assessment in their classroom, it is the official end of year test. And we should adhere to all test security procedures for the summative assessment. Just a quick update for science now. We are recruiting Idaho educators to support the development of our new science assessment. We would very much invite you to participate. This would include administrators, science teachers, general education teachers, and any other content area, special education teachers, those educators supporting English learners, to be involved in the development of our science assessment. This includes item review, this includes data review, as well as standard setting when we reach that point. So we will be actively recruiting teachers, and we hope to see people from all over the state sign up for that. Please feel free to send this out to your staff and recruit them as well. This is a really exciting opportunity, and we're hopeful that we have lots of involvement across the state. And just finally, a quick reminder that the assessment this year is grades 5 and 7 for the science assessment. This is the old test aligned to the old standards. It's the multiple choice format, but I want to remind everyone that in the grade 5 assessment, we will have an embedded field test. This will look with 2 item clusters or 1 item cluster and a set of 4 or 5 standalone items that are available to students in the new assessment format. And we invite you to check out those new items. There is examples of those in the ISAT portal. Just a couple of logistical information points of interest for folks. We don't anticipate that it will take students more than 20 to 25 minutes on the embedded field test item, so it should not add additional time to your assessment schedule to complete this. We're very much interested in how these items are working, how the development of these items is going, and so again, these are not scored as well. We do want to remind you that in 2020, we plan to administer the assessments aligned to the new standards in grades 5 and 8, and it looks like grade 10 is the proposed rule. We anticipate the State Board of Education hearing these changes in 2019 in June, here in just a couple months. This will be the assessment again aligned to the new standards, but in that first year in 2020, no results will be reported. Before we move on, we have a couple questions. The first question is for ISAT. Juniors and seniors that miss their opportunity as sophomores to participate do not need to take the ISAT ELA or math. That is the question, and that is yes, they do not need to take the ISAT ELA or math assessment. Accountability is based on grade 10 participation, and that has already been factored for the students in the class of 2019 or the class of 2020. That being said, it is a local decision. If you want to allow students to take that test as juniors, they are certainly welcome to do that, and the state does pay for that. So if that is a local requirement, it can certainly be administered, but is not a state requirement. All high school students need to have completed an EOC. That would be factored based on current seniors, class of 2019. We will look to that group of students at the end of the year to ensure that at some time in high school they have taken an end of course assessment in biology or chemistry. So please ensure as you start auditing high school students, looking at transcripts and looking at information, that they've completed a college entrance exam and they've completed a high school end of course assessment in biology or chemistry sometime in grades 9 through 12. Susan James has asked, what extension of the window does the change to date we have to test students if they enroll on or before the first Friday in May? Susan, we will not change the enrollment date requirement. It will remain the first Friday in May. So we anticipate or expect only students who have enrolled on or before the first Friday in May would be assessed within the test window. And that will be our participation rate determination. The reason that we're extending the window is so that students currently enrolled who may have missed instructional time due to illness, closures, or wide school closures due to snow or inclement weather have adequate time to meet adequate time to meet their instructional time before you assess them in those content areas. Kathy Loris has asked what standards will be assessed in science on the new assessment. I'm interpreting this, Kathy, and that would be, are we looking at physical science, biology, and earth science? And the answer is yes, in some format for students in the science assessments, but the test blueprint and the test plan has not been fully developed until we finalize the grade level assessment rules with the State Board of Education. We have some preliminary blueprints or ideas about what that will look like, but we need to have a broader conversation with folks specifically for that high school assessment around the level of or the number of standards, the number of content areas, I think in specifically what grade 10 will look like. But also we want to make sure that we're aligning our assessment to our standards, which includes earth science, physical science, and life science. Anita Christensen Coons has asked, the test administration manual for ISAT says that 9th and 11th grades can take the ISAT at no cost to the district. That is correct. That is paid for by the state and optional to districts. And the follow-up question is, are their scores included in accountability, proficiency, or participation, or just 10th grade included in these counts? Anita, thank you for that clarifying question. Only 10th grade is factored into accountability, whether it be participation or performance measures. So only 10th grade, regardless of 9th or 11th grade taking the assessment in high school. Those are all of our questions related to ISAT. So I'll turn things over now to Melanie. Again, if you have questions related to any topic we're talking about or think of things that we've already covered, please feel free to continue to type your questions in the chat box, or in the questions box rather, and we will continue to answer those as we go.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It has already arrived. The access window is closing this Friday, March 15th. This closing date was an extension, a little theme of our webinar today with the extended deadlines, but it was also an extension week based upon snow and illness across the state. The rest of this week is a great time, I guess we don't have too many days, but a few days to complete missing domains when possible for your English learners. And we just wanted to show you how busy you have been despite closures. As of last Thursday, here are completed number of tests per domain statewide. So I'll let you briefly look at those numbers. So 17,000 roughly between listening, reading, and speaking, and about almost 10,000 writing tests. And again, this was almost a week ago, so I think it's probably crept up a little bit. And writing is to be expected. Sometimes that's a manual group administration where you're waiting for certain bands of your students to take that either individually or within small groups. So just a thank you for all you've done during this test window and continue to do to support our English learners. So March 15th is again the end of the test window this Friday, and also marks a very critical deadline regarding return materials. Though we extended the test window, the shipping deadline was not and cannot be extended. All completed paper test materials must be picked up by UPS this Friday, March 15th, and sent back to DRC, our vendor. If you have staff that need guidance on shipping, return shipping, please know they may not have received the district and school test coordinator manual. This is a manual which outlines all the return processes. This is a visual here on the screen of the manual, and if you happen to have it at your district location and it's not with the folks that are tasked with test returns, we ask that you please share. It's a pretty visual and great resource for them. Here too is a brief outline of the materials to return, the secure versus the non-secure that do not need returning. And an FAQ that we get is what to do with your extra pre-ID labels, and those can be securely destroyed. And on a more serious note, I feel like a little Debbie Downer today with all these reminders, but this is very serious. There are some large implications of late returns, which would be anything not returned and postmarked to DRC by this Friday, March 15th. These items will not be a part of Idaho's final score report if they're returned late. As a result, late return materials for students will show in access appeals because it will read as an incomplete record for your English learner. Essentially, we would not have the test record for a student who should have tested even though they tested. They just wouldn't be included in our final report. So this may also impact accountability calculations for your district. So we just ask anyone on the call today, please help us spread the word. Check on your staff in schools who are heading up access testing to make sure they know about this return shipping deadline. So what's next? After returning materials, you get a very small breather, about a couple weeks, and then another critical task, which is data validation. The pre-reporting data validation for schools is a very important step, and it's a chance to correct demographic errors, validate duplicate records to merge, document accommodations, and insert do not score codes for incomplete domains as applicable. Your schools will be able to do this during a window, which is April 1st through the 5th. It is a short window, but it's typically manageable if you start early in the week. Again, we're asking for your help to help us identify who will be completing this task at your district, with the goal to ensure that you have someone identified to complete data validation for all access testers and that they're aware of this validation window. In the past, I think we've had some folks think that it was kind of an open window of sorts, but it is not. It's only a week, and sometimes that is falling around spring break. So we wanted to spread that word widely. It's always really an unfortunate story when we see a misspelled name in DRC and it doesn't get changed. We do try to take a pass at that as well at the state level, but a simple correction can allow a student to receive their full composite score when they tested in all domains. DRC has a lot of rules and regulations about this process. And here is a visual on the screen of a supplement that was able to be downloaded that could assist your staff with the data validation process as well. Okay, do not score codes. As part of data validation, we wanted to quickly call out the need to seek maybe your notes or consult with staff as needed as to why a student may have a missing domain within the access test. This year, we put emphasis on taking close notes on attendance and tracking students per domain when completed. So we hope your efforts in that regard assist you in applying accurate do not score codes as they apply. So these are only for missing domains when the codes as shown here apply to the student situation. The codes are absent, invalidate, declined. I know at a couple calls like that, a student refusing to test, so that would be declined. And then if the domain was not complete due to a special education IEP or 504 consideration. You apply the do not score codes in WIDA AMS during the data validation window. And the guides that we reference here on page 73 kind of walks you through how to put the do not score codes in AMS. Okay, so we wanted to show you how to pull out a very helpful tutorial on data validation from WIDA's secure site. Thanks to my colleague Danielle here for creating this quick visual guide on how to get there. You may or may not know the task when looking for something on WIDA's webpage. That's a small joke there. It's hard to find things, so we hope this helps, and feel free to share this slide to folks who are completing the data validation process. Danielle, we're ready to roll through the steps. So please first visit WIDA's main site here. You would select your login, enter when it pops up the login credentials. You'll scroll down to see Access for ELS training tile online 1 through 12. You'll click on afterward, and then data validation is the tutorial that will pop up. This is when you would begin that tutorial. It is very useful to kind of get your head around why we do this and the steps involved. Thanks, Danielle. And finally, we just wanted to provide a quick review of the access appeals timeline. This is our final step, and it's sort of just, again, getting you thinking ahead just a little bit. It's a relatively new process. Last year was our first appeal window for access testing for ELS, and of course, it's due to our English learners being part of our state accountability plan now. So after all of your hard work correcting files as needed or records, once these are all processed, the state will also work with DRC on any discrepancies that we see or errors that we want to fix. And then a final score file will be available for you, printed in online May 21st. And the access appeals window will open after that, in June for a couple weeks, June 3rd to the 14th. Again, we'll have some information forthcoming on this process and instructions, but it's just another plea for your help to assist us in identifying who in your district will complete these appeals. Many staff end their contracts who are involved with working with ELDs at this time, so early identification of who might head this up in your district would be very helpful. And that's it for me. Thank you. Any questions?
We have one question from Kelly Glenn, who is asking if students withdraw but don't move to another school, are they just considered absent? And what about students who are suspended? So Kelly, let me clarify that if a student withdraws before the end of the test window, they are not factored into your accountability or performance measures or any of the assessments, so long as that withdrawal happens prior to the first Friday in May. Or before the end of the test window. Related to the access assessment for English learners, that would be the first Friday in March. So I'm not sure if this question is covering specifically IELA or, I'm sorry, WIDA's access assessment, or if it's referring to the ISAT test. So I'm covering both. If a student is suspended, regardless of the suspension code that you've administered or entered in IC, the student is still considered enrolled in your district and would count in your participation rates. And that is in the rule, Accountability in Public Schools 080203-112. So if you have any questions about that, I can refer you to that section of the rule, and we can walk through that if you have any specific questions or follow-up. I hope that answers your question. If we've misunderstood that, please circle back with us, but I think we've got it. Okay, my turn again. We'll talk about the Idaho Reading Indicator. In the next webinar, you'll be hearing from Andrew related to this topic, but I'll take it from here. We are preparing for the spring test window. That starts May 1st and runs through May 31st. We have a lot of questions right now about the use of the accommodation, which is turning off the timer. And I want to clarify, because this is coming up more and more frequently right now, the primary use for the accommodation, or to turn off the timer, is to be used for students with significant cognitive disabilities. That is the primary use for that accommodation. It is appropriate to use this accommodation for students during a progress monitoring month. For instance, February, January, December, November, or April, but in the spring and fall assessment windows, so the September time period and the May test window, it is not appropriate to use this accommodation. The reason for this is because one of the reading skills that is evidence of early literacy skill development is automaticity. So it is important that the timer be applied during the test administration windows for state required assessments in fall and spring. Happy to talk more about that on a webinar coming the first week of April with iStation and the SCE. We'll be hosting a webinar to prepare for the spring test window, and we'll talk more about that accommodation. If you have questions in the meantime, please reach out. Also, to talk really quickly as you prepare for the spring test window, a reminder, we have a lot of districts taking advantage of on-demand assessments, but during the May assessment window, the state will only capture the very first assessment unless the school or district submits an incident in the test incident log. So please be certain that your students have had all of the modeling activities appropriate for their grade level or for any area in which they might be gating into. We see some kindergartners right now preparing to take the spelling test, which you might not have demonstrated for them or modeled for them, so that might be a really important thing to consider. Some of our first graders are also preparing to gate into new assessments as they've leveled out of their grade level. So we hope to address and show you how you can identify those students in that webinar with iStation the first week of April. We'll publicize that date as soon as we finalize those arrangements. All right, and I'm filling in for Karen today. So Appreciate Karen for providing the information here. We just want to give you an update on the status of our science portfolio completion in IPASS. There is still a couple of weeks left. I believe the window closes April. In April, there's another week after that. But we want to make sure folks complete this. So we are looking at 652 students. We still have 4 that have not been assigned to a teacher. That would be really important to make sure that those students have a teacher link so that teacher can complete those portfolios. 359 have not started uploading artifacts. Please do not wait until the end of the test window to update portfolios by uploading artifacts. The system will not handle the volume on the last day, and unfortunately, our technology staff cannot be available after 5 p.m. to support folks when that system starts to slow down. So please circle back with your teachers in high school, middle school, and elementary school, grades 5, 7, and 10, completing the portfolio assessment for science, and make sure that they get that done very soon. The Idaho Training Clearinghouse has a portfolio manual, the user manual, and the tutorial series all available and posted. Karen has spent a lot of time getting these files and resources put together as reference. So the Idaho Training Clearinghouse, you can access all of those amazing resources there now. Please, again, remind your teachers these are available. If they have questions about completing the portfolio, this is their one-stop shop for everything they need. IPASS closes April 7th at 11:59 p.m. Please, again, remember, as I said just a moment ago, our technology staff mans the phones and email until 5 p.m. So whether or not there is someone here in the daytime is great, but if your teachers are waiting until 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night on April 7th to upload artifacts and the system crashes or is offline because of the heavy load, there will be no one here to support them. We ask that you encourage teachers to complete that process before the last day. And now shifting gears to the Idaho alternate assessments in English language arts and math. The resources have been posted to the portal. The alternate assessment test administration manual is available. The directions for test administration must be downloaded and used by teachers when conducting the assessment or administering the assessment. This is done in a one-on-one setting, and the directions for test administration must be followed. There's an alternate assessment tutorial available. It's a video series. It walks through the process for teachers who are new to administering the alternate assessment. We encourage folks to view that if they haven't already. It's important to review the data entry interface, complete the student response check, understand the early stopping rule, and know where to find the directions for test administration, all captured in that video tutorial. Just a couple reminders, the learner characteristics inventory is open now and must be completed in order for a student who is identified and tied in the test information distribution engine as a student with a disability and flagged for the alternate assessment. The first step after that happens is to complete the learner characteristics inventory, and only then will a student have access to the alternate assessment. The administration for grades 10 and 11 is open this year. Remember, we're making that transition to grade 10, so both high school grades 10 and 11 will be assessed this year. That is open now. Grades 3 through 8 alternate assessment window opens on Monday along with the rest of our system. And we need to remind everyone, again, Karen has duplicated this message over and over. Please reference the test administration manual for details. The card for the alternate assessment on the portal is the one-stop shop for all of that information. It is absolutely imperative that teachers follow this administration process. And of course, Karen, so appropriately has put her contact information on this slide. So if you have questions, please follow up with Karen. She's happy to walk you through that. She's just participating in a Medicaid meeting today and couldn't be with us during the webinar. Okay, we have a couple questions. So now's a great chance to stop before Paul gets started on the most important update for NAEP. So the first question from Anita is for you, Melanie, and that is to help prepare for appeals for access. Will ELMS be updated with our final IC information for the year, or do we need to prepare appeal information for students that have unenrolled? And we're putting our heads together right now. Since the participation is based on March, your March IC file that's due Friday will populate ELMS and will be used to then also correspond and correlate to the appeals application, which will open sometime in early June. So your March IC upload is what will factor into the appeals window, because the June appeals window will predate the final end of year IC upload. So please make sure your March upload is accurate.
On point.
100% accurate, Anita. Marcia Gravo has asked, is there updated information on accommodations for students with audio issues on the IRI? Marcia, no, not yet. We are still working with iStation and others as far as support for students who have audio issues. We do have some considerations for fixed form assessments for students that we are working through, and more to come. It's one of the first tasks we have on Andrew's list. It might be task number 3, actually. Anita Christensen has asked another question. With our current 10th graders taking the ALT assessment this year, have to take it again next year's 11th graders? No, they will not. That is the purpose of the double grade level testing this year, 10 and 11. So 10th graders this year are taking the assessment to allow us to have standard setting completed in order to score those assessments in grade 10 as appropriate, and going forward, we will only administer the alternate assessment in grade 10 in English language arts and math, the same as we do for our general education assessments in English language arts and math. And Susan James, will you remind districts to remove students from their TIDE uploads when they have left their district? Yes, Susan, thank you for that great reminder. I will remind them, as you have just done. Districts, if you have students who are withdrawing, please withdraw them from TIDE, or do not include them in your TIDE uploads when they have left the district. We are, as you all know from our roadshow, you're stealing each other's students by uploading students who have withdrawn or are no longer yours. So please make sure that if a student withdraws from a school, you've taken them out of your TIDE uploads if you're automating those processes, or you're withdrawing them as soon as they leave your district, so that the next school can include them in their assessment application as appropriate. Thank you, Susan, for that reminder. Okay, Paul, it's now your turn for NAEP updates.
Hello, Idahoans. This is Paul Kleinert. We did it. 6 weeks of testing later, Idaho students are done taking the NAEP test. Schools in other states are continuing because of frigid weather, and in the case of Washington and Oregon, snow. In such adversity, we are hardy. In the coming weeks, I will be sending out thank you notes for the school coordinators that put in time to help with the NAEP. Thank you to those listening who participated. Your work is invaluable. The results for the NAEP often come in November or December, but there is not yet any word for release of results. The 2017 results came in very late in the spring of 2018. This was due to extra calculations, changing from paper and pencil to a digital-based assessment. Keep your eye on the news from November to March. I am crossing my fingers for results this year. This year, 2019, is the first operational high school transcript study. The high school transcript study is part 2 of the 12th grade NAEP for 2019. The information collected will be invaluable for understanding the relationship between what courses students are actually taking, the credits completed, and how they did on the NAEP. In order to complete the study, the NAEP staff are collecting transcript information. Information needed right now include the grading policy and courses taken. Only schools that participated in the 2019 12th grade NAEP will provide this transcript information. If you have any questions, please send me an email or call me.
Okay, no more questions right now, so we will turn things over to Melanie.
Hey, it's me again. Some updates on our SAT school day. It's getting quite close. SAT school day is April 9th. And we wanted to briefly recap what materials your schools should have at this point in time. Coordinator planning kits have arrived. The pre-administration materials have arrived as of last week. And that was an important delivery because it included your pre-ID labels, your answer sheets, and then student instructions and resources regarding testing. It also included all of your test manuals. And then test materials themselves will arrive according to your school's spring break. We captured those early on in the fall, late summer when we were getting your site contact information, and we provided those dates to the College Board. They adjust their mailings according to what you reported on your spring break. So individual school test materials will arrive either March 19th through the 21st or April 2nd through the 4th. So if you're in need of additional materials, after inventorying what has been received thus far, if you feel a school site needs additional materials, please email our Idaho SD support at College Board email. That is our Idaho field team behind that email, and they can quickly assist you with your needs. This would apply to any test manuals needed or needed additional answer sheets, which is really quite common for new students who've come into your school or district, or seniors who've recently been identified as needing to test and you don't have them in your pre-ID file upload, and your numbers show that accordingly with your answer sheet inventory. So again, feel free to email our College Board folks to request that. So there's a required test day coordinator training again this year. The training link was sent on February 26th to individual school site test coordinators. College Board is monitoring the completion of the trainings. We recently got a report from them with maybe some discrepancies around staff changes or email corrections. So we're going to investigate that. It kind of hit across the state just to make sure all designated test coordinators have the training completed. It can just be a good reminder, if you are a test coordinator on the line here today, to have your SAT contacts at your school sites complete this training. It does require a College Board account to begin, and that surprised me a little bit, but when you click the link, they will need to have a designated College Board account. That's usually not a problem for a SAT date coordinator, but if those coordinators are sending that out to any hired staff, they'll need to either do the training en masse together or guide them as to how to set up a College Board educator account. We've heard of some districts projecting the tutorial in a large room to train a large group of people, and it's worked quite well. It's pretty friendly access and organization for that purpose. If you have any questions, again, let us know on the training component. Okay, the other SAT day recorded trainings. We wanted to show you where they are so your staff can find other resources as we lead up to the school day. I've had a couple questions around how to structure the essay, what are the rules with including that optional essay, and we have a brief 20-minute webinar that's recorded off of our website that really goes over the logistics around that. If you need an overview, to review also the Khan Academy resource to share with students during like a pre-test session, pre-admin session, this is where you can find that. That's newly posted actually. So these are located off of our SDE website under our department, Assessment and Accountability, and then the College Entrance Exam page. Okay, the pre-admin session. For a lot of new counselors especially, they ask, what is pre-admin exactly? So it's a pre-test session essentially for your juniors and or maybe seniors who might be included in this. Here are just a few points on the importance of conducting these sessions within your schools. Most schools that I interact with have a routine already. They might target juniors at an English class or arrange a short assembly day before spring break to complete these tasks. We took note of your feedback last year and the need to have these materials in your hands earlier prior to spring break. So we hope that this early delivery has helped in scheduling these sessions. And then overall, just a couple highlights on what it can do, what these kind of sessions do. They save time on test day. Students can learn about the free college score sends in advance, so they can be thinking about that. Of course, very important to distribute the test day resources to students, and that to me was most important. It didn't have a lot of impact when we gave it a few days before the test. So we hope that your students across your high schools are getting those materials early now before spring break. There's also the optional student questionnaire. It allows students to opt into the College Board search, which links them to college resources and scholarship programs. And they can select what questions they want to answer. They're not all required, but it's also important to note that if they already did this as part of their PSAT test taking, they would not need to repeat their responses. So that might save a little time. A few other things to do during this session. College Board does want you to complete a verification for the required demographics. So even with the pre-ID label on, I know there's a little bit of a sigh here, but they really want to make sure that the student information is correct. And so they ask, as time allows, that students grid in their name, their birth date, and state-issued EDU ID right below the pre-ID label. So the students without pre-ID labels that will be testing will need to grade all of the required fields, which will include a lot more. So it's important to have your AI code handy during these sessions with students so they know what they're filling out. It'll take them a little bit of a longer time to do so. And it's also important to remember to provide your students with any unique start and end times to the SAT day. We have occasions where students are a little late because they were just thinking it was a normal start. And some schools start a little bit earlier. Okay, the non-standard admin report, or NAR, is now available as of yesterday. Please share this with any SSD coordinators, SAT testing staff. These folks did receive an email just a couple of days ago about how to access this report. We recommend extracting it now, and then you can go in and see if there's any updates before the test day itself. Essentially, this report captures any student testing on the non-standard form during the primary test day. It also identifies those approved for testing during the accommodated window, which is the 9th through the 22nd. The report also lists additional instructions for students with accommodation. And right around the corner as well is the makeup day, just to highlight, that's April 23rd, and it is for any junior who missed the primary test day and they're eligible to test, obviously. So test coordinators will receive a survey link from the College Board on test day, like they're not busy enough, but it is required that they open this link. It's a quick little questionnaire as to how many needs, how many materials or counts you might anticipate for a makeup day. They don't use the same form, so it's important to capture this so you can get updated test materials mailed to your schools in time. And the College Board does require a response to the survey even if you have no need for a makeup. There's the opportunity to indicate that as well. Finally, for shipping, we heard this from our College Board partners during our roadshow. Just a note on shipping back materials after your test day. The manual has some pretty explicit and visual shipping instructions. It will be in your test day coordinator manual, and it is important to put them in that order. If you pile up without regard to ordering or what you're putting where, it does delay scoring. College Board has to then sometimes send it to a different vendor and sort, which takes quite a bit of time, as you can imagine. So we ask that you spread the word on following those instructions. And then same-day shipping returns are required for sites that are using off-site testing, like an alternative high school testing at another high school in your district. They would need to return those materials during the same day, April 9th. Otherwise, if you're testing, or like a hotel, sometimes we hear of virtual schools, some of our charters who might rent space or be using another approved space for SAT day. Those have to be returned for security purposes on the same day. If you're testing at your school, at your own school site, the pickup is the following day, April 10th. If you have accommodated test takers, and I should rephrase that, if you are accommodating other types of test takers, like a virtual school student at a high school site, there's a separate packaging process for these schools with different AI codes. So again, I think just the general message is if you're hiring folks who might be helping with this process to understand the intricacies, to expedite reporting and accurate returns, and then ensure students not enrolled in your school but testing there know their own school's AI code, and it's just really great to communicate this in advance if possible. That's all I have.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is Danielle. This is a friendly reminder. The testing window is open for AccuPlacer. The last day of testing is April 26th, which is still over a month and a half away, so you have some time. Does your school need a screen reader for your students? As many of you know, screen readers can be super expensive. An Idaho school was on the hunt for a reasonably priced screen reader that would be compatible with the AccuPlacer. After doing some research, they found NVDA. It is a free screen reader for PCs. The school has reported back to me that the screen reader was successful for their AccuPlacer administration. If you're interested or curious about the product, please visit the hyperlink on the slide. And if you have any questions regarding AccuPlacer, drop me a line. Any questions? So we don't have any questions related specifically to college entrance exams, although they all might be thinking very specifically right now about any questions they have, because they did get quite a bit of great information. So as you sort through that, Dave Harrison has asked me to clarify that we're really stealing kids from each other when they're dually enrolled. So we want to make sure to clarify, if you withdraw students from your school during the test window, please withdraw them in Tide so that when another school goes to enroll them, they can be added seamlessly to the test environment and test process at their new school. If you are testing students that are legitimately, truly dually enrolled, attending 2 different schools across districts, we see this in the Treasure Valley oftentimes, and we see this in schools that are where students are enrolled in a brick and mortar building and perhaps in an online school as well. We'd like to encourage you to coordinate the enrollment of students in Tide. You can dually enroll students in the system, but it must be done in a manual process. So I know most districts have already uploaded their rosters and they're preparing for testing, which opens next week. But if you're just getting started with that process and you know that you have students who attend another school in the state or another taking classes elsewhere that may also include that student, please coordinate that effort and manually enroll that student in the Tide system so that they are available in both locations to complete ISAT, English Language Arts, and Math and Science assessments as necessary. So thanks, Dave, for the clarification on the dual enrolled factor there. Don't see any other questions right now in the questions box. We do have a few more minutes, so if you have anything else, we would love to have you put those questions in now, but of course, if you missed that before we close the webinar, you can always send us questions after the fact, and we're happy to answer them. You have our contact information, and that's always welcome. Cherie Hamilton has asked if we need to upload spreadsheets to delete students. So Cherie, that is one way you can take care of students who've withdrawn from the system. You can incorporate that into your Tide data file, or you can manually do that if it's just 1 or 2. It depends on the number or volume, I suppose, and your enrollment counts. I think that's the best way to guide you there. Certainly, if it's 1 or 2 students, it's fairly easy to do manually. But I think if you're cleaning up rosters that were loaded perhaps in January, and have had quite a few withdrawals and haven't done that process yet, it might be easier to do that in your file layout. And there are directions and guidance in that file layout in TIDE in order to accomplish that. Anita Christensen has asked if we have, 2 years ago, we received a list of district test coordinators for each district with a contact number so we could reach out when we had kids disappearing. Will you receive this list again? I believe, Anita, this is a process we did last year when we were dual enrolling kids and we had an email link for you all. Certainly, if you need contact information, we can provide that. I don't know how that was facilitated a couple years ago. I'm trying to remember if I had breakfast this morning. So 2 years ago is a stretch for me, Anita. I'll go back and look and see what we provided, and if we have something that we can do again, we'll do that. If you're noticing students are disappearing and you're curious about where or what's going on, please let us know and we can coordinate that contact information with you as needed as well. And Suzanne has asked, why does the interim assessment window close on Wednesday? Great question, Suzanne. Primarily, the transition from the interim assessment window to the summative assessment window is based on the fact that most of the test incidents we have seen over the last several years involve teachers believing they're administering the interim assessment window because they just did that on Friday and they're coming back and it's Tuesday and they want to administer another interim assessment this week. And they realize after the fact that they're actually administering a summative test to their students. And so we tried to make a very clear, clean break in the test windows. There has been overwhelming interest in leaving the interim assessment windows open during the summative test window. So teachers would have access to that as part of their instruction, specifically in math. We're hearing this over and over again. And we are definitely investigating that option, but I think it requires such a level of training and clear understanding in the part of the field that we need to get some more input from the folks like you who support schools in doing that and making sure that the responsibility to know when a summative assessment is being administered and must adhere to all of the test security protocols is really the onus is on districts, and we want to ensure we support you in a way that makes that possible without overwhelming or overburdening you. So we're going to investigate ways in which we can support that, but in the meantime, this clear delineation is so that teachers really know when they are assessing next week, it is not an interim assessment. So we again want to stress that clear delineation in this window break. So we appreciate the fact that that we have interest in that, but I think there's a great deal of risk there as well. So we have a lot to consider. So we appreciate the feedback and the interest. In the meantime, I don't see any other questions. A couple comments as people have thought about whether or not to leave interim assessments open, and so I appreciate that. I'll definitely be considering those as we move forward with decisions for next year. Anything else to add from the team? All right. Our next webinar is April 10th. So that's kind of right in the early stages of our final accountability window for English language arts, math, science, and of course assessments and our alternate assessments right before the SAT test day. So we really encourage you to participate in that webinar. If you haven't already registered, you can still do that and look for our next newsletter next week. We appreciate your time today and staying with us for the full hour. And as always, have a great rest of the day and a wonderful spring break if you're headed out on vacation next week or the week after. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.